everyone. Thank you. Hello, everyone. What a beautiful day we have on one of my personally favorite places at the waterfront in Kingston. But I think, I said this earlier for an awesome infrastructure event we did for Worth Bridge, just across right here, and said how the sun was shining today because the universe knows how important these two announcements are, but especially this one. I want to thank everyone for coming. This is such an incredible coalition and group of people coming together for something that we know is fundamentally important and fundamental human rights for us, not just across New York, but across our country. I want to say thank you to the Ulster County Chamber of Commerce for being a partner with us today, to the Catskill Center, to NYPIRG, the Hudson Valley Farm Hub, Indivisible Ulster. I want to give a special shout out to some of our other elected officials and key people here. We've got Jonathan Hefner, the majority leader for the Ulster County Legislature with us. We've got Peter Criswell, Ulster County Legislator, District 7. And I want to give a special shout out to my friend Ray Dykeman here too, who is a dairy farmer in the northern part of our district. But it's really important that we know that agriculture and the environment go hand in hand. We are in this fight together, and we don't complete it, we don't hit the goals of the CLCPA, we don't have a healthy food source if we do not support agriculture. So I just want to say thank you to all of our people in agriculture here. Thank you so much for joining us and for your support. We're here today because every single one of us deserves to breathe clean air and drink clean water. And yet every day across our state, millions of New Yorkers are left without access to these necessities, left to drink water from contaminated water pipes, and left to live with polluted air. That's because for too long, we have treated our right to a healthy and safe environment as a privilege rather than a fundamental right. Last year, as a new state senator, earlier this year, I should say, although it feels like an eternity ago, but earlier this year, one of the first major actions I was incredibly proud to take was to co-sponsor and join my colleagues in passing a bill that would empower voters to finally add environmental rights to our New York State Constitution. Because of that bill, New Yorkers will have a historic opportunity this November to vote on a measure that would add 15 simple yet powerful words to the New York State Constitution that reads, "Each person shall have a right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment." Right now, 43 states have some form of environmental values enshrined in their constitutions. Yet only Montana and Pennsylvania have actually established environmental rights on par with other civil liberties. If the Greene Amendment is approved by voters this November, New York will become the third state to do so, continuing our legacy of climate-forward progress. And across upstate New York, we have significantly aging infrastructure, specifically our water infrastructure, that hinders people's ability to drink and access clean water. In many communities across my district, water infrastructure is over 200 years old. It's still built with wood and/or lead pipes, and they break, and they're corroded, and they cause extreme disruptions for people, as well as cause massive financial hurdles for local municipalities having to fix, update, and upgrade that infrastructure. This amendment would give communities more weight in demanding better funding streams to upgrade these water infrastructure lines and to get everyone access to the clean water that they deserve, which is also, as we know and we are here to say loudly, a fundamental human right. Fighting for a future where environmental rights matter in our communities affects every single one of us. This amendment will help shape future laws and standards that pave the way for a green labor workforce. It will help us promote sustainability in our agricultural sector and keep our food supply chain safe, advance environmental justice in communities that have disproportionately borne the impacts of the climate crisis, and it will have a direct and powerful impact on our small business community, because in areas like ours, our natural and scenic resources are what bring people here. We have leaders from many of these areas here with us today, and I'm honored to stand shoulder to shoulder with them in our fight for environmental rights. I'd like to now bring a couple of them up to shed some other light on why this is so important and what this will mean for communities like ours. So thank you all so much for being here with us in this fight. First up, we have Peter Awanowicz, the Executive Director of Environmental Advocates New York.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for those wonderful words. But most importantly, thank you for your votes to get us to this moment. We needed the legislature to act to approve this constitutional amendment to then present to the voters. So thank you very much for that wonderful vote, and thank you to all your colleagues in the Senate and across the Capitol and the Assembly to get us to this point. We started this campaign based on what we were hearing from communities across New York State that were in the throes of crisis. There were communities facing water crises across New York State. There were communities who were subject to environmental racism and injustice. There were communities that were breathing in unhealthful levels of air pollution. And what you hear from these communities is, don't we have a right to breathe clean air? Don't we have a right to drink clean water? And morally as humans, the answer is absolutely yes, you do. But in the eyes of the New York State Constitution, that right is not there yet. This election season, when people start early voting a week from tomorrow, when they go to the polls on November 2nd, we all have the power to change that. When we vote yes, and we get a majority of our friends and family to vote yes with us, we get it. There's no further action to the legislature. The legislature has done their job. There's no need for the governor to weigh in anymore. This is something that is in our hands to say yes or no to, and something to give to ourselves. So when you leave here today, think about the communities you're from. Think about that right to breathe clean air without getting sick or cutting short lives. Think about the value of opening up your tap and saying, you know what, I have a right to drink water that's not going to kill me. These are simple, straightforward, common sense ideas that are not enshrined in our state's constitution. So, Environmental Advocates NY is pleased to be here with you all today. Pleased to be working with so many in coalition from labor, from social justice, environmental justice, from traditional environmental groups on down, to work to get the word out that this election day, we give this right to ourselves. We provide us and future generations the right to breathe clean air, drink clean water, and live in a healthier environment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I want to thank you and Environmental Advocates New York for your leadership in this space and for making sure that all of us know just how important this amendment and this ballot amendment is. Next up, I would like to bring up Sandy Oxford, Director of the Hudson Valley Area Labor Federation.
Thank you. I would like to begin with a land acknowledgement to recognize the indigenous people who are the original stewards of the lands which we now live. As our senator shared, my name is Sandy Oxford, and I am proud to be here with all of you, with our allies who stand with the original instructions of how we should be caring for Mother Earth. The Hudson Valley Area Labor Federation represents 103,000 union families across 7 counties in the Mid-Hudson Catskill region. The goal of this bill would amend the New York State Constitution and lay the foundation that enshrines an environmental Bill of Rights and clarifies that all New Yorkers have the right to clean drinking water, clean air, and a healthful environment. Working families in the Hudson Valley, Catskill region, and across the state of New York are a fundamental concern to the labor movement. The labor movement has hopes and dreams too. Passage of this bill will lead to investments in clean drinking water projects, improved wastewater, stormwater infrastructure, developments of new technologies in energy, the preservation and responsible oversight of parkland, and also contribute to the long-term health of New Yorkers. The health and safety of all New Yorkers is an excellent reason to flip over your ballot and vote yes in the affirmative on number 2 proposition. The possible local impact of the passage of this will allow many of us here in the grassroots to prioritize the issues that are very important to all of us and set a legal and civil foundation that will mean job creation in the short term and a healthier environment for generations to come. It will also clearly establish that the environmental health and safety of the citizens of this state is a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next up, we've got Jeremy Cherson, Senior Management of Government Affairs at Riverkeeper.
Thank you so much. I am so glad to be here. I want to give some historical context. When the indigenous peoples who lived in this area, the Ramapo, Lenape, the Mohawk, and Mohican, along the entire Mohican-Tuck River, which was the indigenous name for the Hudson, when Henry Hudson first sailed into these indigenous lands, his writer on board wrote about how the river ran silver with fish, with shad and herring. Every single spring, there were so many fish coming up from the Atlantic into the Hudson River and up into the tributaries that it was said you could walk on the backs of fish. Now, fast forward a few hundred years later, we do not have that same river. We've come a long way. Down in Terrytown, the GM plant used to paint cars, and you used to know which color they were painting the cars by the color of the water lapping up on the shores. Now, fast forward to 2021, we have an opportunity to enshrine a right to clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment into the New York Constitution. But that will not be the end of the story, because we know what happens when people gain rights. There are always others who come out and continue to, and will try to erode that right. So we will need all of you to remain engaged after the election, after we win putting this on the amendment, to ensure we pass new laws to put teeth into the amendment so we can enforce those environmental rights. That's right. Because we see what happens when corporate interests get their hands on your rights. So you always have to be vigilant, which is why it's so important to have groups like Indivisible and all my partners behind me who continue to fight for a clean environment, for healthy workplaces that we all need. So I want to thank you so much for coming out here, and please vote yes, flip over your ballot on Prop 2.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next up, we have Jonathan Vicks, Executive Director and Co-Founder of For the Many.
Hello everyone, again I'm Jonathan Vicks, I'm the Executive Director of For the Many. For the Many is building a grassroots movement of everyday people to make New York work for all of us, no matter what we look like, where we come from, or how much money we have. We're coming together across race, age, and language to fight for laws and win elections that take power back from the greedy few and put it in our hands. And that's why we support this critical amendment, because we have to enshrine in law that our rights to clean air and clean water is more important than the ability of a few to profit off of polluting our environment. And so I'm so thankful to be here with all of our allied groups, and we greatly appreciate them and Senator Hinchey for her vocal support of this amendment. And like the previous speaker said, I'm going to echo it. This is one step in part of a long-term fight that we must wage to move New York to 100% renewables as quickly as possible in order to protect our environment, our people, and the planet. So again, thank you everybody for being here, and remember to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Now we will hear from Larry Say, farmer at Dig Acres and chapter leader, Hudson Valley Young Farmers Coalition.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to start off and say thank you to the Senator for organizing this event and for supporting our local agricultural community and economy with your past legislative actions. My name is Larry C. I am the farm manager for Dig Acres. We are a 20-acre farm in Chester, New York, and I am also a leader of our local Hudson Valley Young Farmers Coalition chapter. Dig Acres is a training farm. Every year we bring 4 or 5 folks who have never farmed before, and we train them in what we call seed to delivery, everything that it takes to run a farm. At the beginning of every season, I tell them that growing plants is just like taking care of any other living thing. You know, they want to grow and they want to thrive, and it's our job to create a healthy and nurturing environment for them. It is our duty to take care of these plants. You know, they're kind of like our children. Children that we'll eventually eat, but our children nonetheless. So that is to say, you know, we support this amendment because at the core of it, you know, what do plants need? They need air and they need water. You know, sometimes we have very myopic view of agriculture where it's about what are you spraying, what kind of fertilizer are you using, but at its core, you know, what you need is a healthy environment. And so we believe that this amendment will help farmers have a basis for legislation and for legislation to help us. I'm sorry, this is not really my normal day-to-day. Excuse me. But in any case, we believe that this amendment will help the cascading effects of climate change as well. You know, pollution, we see it every day. Pollution and smog and dirty water, how it poisons our crops, how it withers our crops. You know, we are on the front lines of climate change. I mean, last month my farm was 2 feet underwater from Hurricane Ida. We lost $50,000 worth of the produce overnight. We know that climate change is the #1 challenge facing agriculture today. And we support this amendment because we understand that in order for us to do what we love, which is to grow food for our communities, support our communities, to build a local economy, we need to have a healthy environment. Thank you.
And Larry, I just want to uplift your shirt too for a second here, because you know I love it, but it says farming is a public service. Thank you very much. Our next up is Taylor Jaffe, Program Associate, Catskill Mountainkeeper.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I wanted to start off with a thank you to Senator Hinchey and your team for gathering us today, and also for all the great work you've been doing for the environment and for our community. Thank you also to Environmental Advocates New York for all of your work and kind of spearheading this coalition, gathering us all, and thank you for the opportunity to talk today. I want to talk to you all about 3 things. The work I've been doing at Catskill Mountainkeeper, how it relates to the Greene Amendment, and then why I personally am so excited about the Greene Amendment. So as I mentioned, I work for Catskill Mountainkeeper. Catskill Mountainkeeper has always been an advocate for the Catskill region, its resources and communities. This past year, however, we realized that we needed to kind of put a name to the environmental injustices happening in the region. Everyone sees the Catskills and sees the natural resources, sees rural communities, but they don't understand always that the resources are not equally accessed by all of our communities. So we started off this work kind of doing a landscape analysis, understanding who lives in the Catskills, what environmental hazards we're facing, and then where these hazards overlap with communities of color and low-income communities. We have a distribution problem in the Catskills. When we think about environmental justice, there's 3 concepts of justice that we can use. Distributive justice: are environmental benefits and burdens distributed equally? The answer is no. Procedural justice: does everyone have equal access and meaningful involvement in the way that we create and live in healthy communities? Finally, there's justice as recognition. Who's been doing the work the longest, and are we raising those voices? So with the Greene Amendment, we can really get into distributive justice. We know we have a distribution problem. We know minority and low-income communities disproportionately bear the impacts of climate change and disproportionately bear all of our environmental hazards. The exciting thing about the Greene Amendment, however, is that I think environmental justice is really at an important intersection for all of our justice efforts. So when we think about intersectionality, this is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw from the feminist movement, and it has to do with how individual characteristics like race, class, and gender overlap with one another. The environmental justice movement is so uniquely positioned to tackle different systems of oppression, from racism to classism. We can't think about having environmental justice without solving issues like housing and health outcomes. So I'm so excited for the Greene Amendment, and I think we need to use it as a really powerful tool. I say tool because I want to echo what everyone else has been saying, that this is the start of the work. We can't have environmental justice until everyone can actually realize this healthy environment. We need to enshrine the right in our Constitution, but then we have to do the work to make sure everyone can actually enjoy a healthy environment, clean air, and clean water. Thank you all so much for coming out today, and thank you for the work that we're going to do.
Thank you, Taylor. Next, we will have Althea M, Assistant Director of Advocacy at Scenic Hudson.
Hello, and thank you, Senator Hinchey, for your leadership and for being the environmental and political champion that we so desperately need in this country. And thank you to all of my colleagues who have already spoken so eloquently on this important step that the voters of the Hudson Valley, you and the state, are going to be asked to take this November. When I began working at Scenic Hudson, I explained to my children that mommy would be working for a company that does something really extraordinary, protecting trees, lands, and waters of the beautiful place that we just moved to, the Hudson Valley. I actually write tree hugger and water champion on any form that asks what I do for a living. I traveled across this country as a military brat, then in the military myself, and finally the wife of a Navy pilot. I learned that as incredible and as privileged as we are to live in this country, some basic yet important life-giving actions are not available equally to all. I explained this to my children. I said, when we take for granted that the water, the air, and the land that we depend on for life will always be okay, we let bad things happen that sometimes cannot be undone. Drinking clean water, breathing clean air should never be negotiable. All people should be able to trust the quality of the water coming out of their faucets. All people should not have to worry about the air we breathe and be forced by economic necessity to live next to polluting factories. And accept that you live in a place where the air is difficult to breathe on a sunny day because large industrial sites and truck traffic are adjacent to the places where your children play and go to school. You should not be forced to live in a community where decades of contamination have poisoned water resources and where, right now, even as we speak, new industrial plants are being planned that promise to increase by 1,000% the amount of greenhouse gas emissions and not just particulate matter in our air. Yes, General Electric and Dan Scammer, I'm talking about you. Yes. Communities are places where we build lives. And in the Hudson Valley, we recognize that people are what communities are made of. And every person in every community should expect that clean water, clean air, and a healthy environment are not just for those with the ability to be where those resources are safe. Everyone should have access to fresh, healthy food and green open spaces to play. I'm excited to be a part of Scenic Hudson, where this belief is core to who we are. And right now, we are working to build an incredible new park right here in Kingston called Hudson Cliffs. Stay tuned. And it's also why we support the Environmental Rights Amendment on the ballot this November. It is time to ensure that these rights are clearly and without qualification for everybody. When decisions are being made that impact these precious resources, every voice, every person has a right to be at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Althea. It's clear from the showing that we have and from how important this is, there is an incredible coalition standing behind this ballot amendment. And this is not just for us and for all the things we heard, but it's for the next generation, right? We have a moment right now to make sure that we are enshrining these rights so that everyone born 20 years ago, born tomorrow, born in 50 years, has access to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment. This is critical across our country, and it starts right here in New York State. And so I want to thank our coalition partners. Thank you all so much for the work that you do in this space, for the fight that you give this every day. We could not do this without you, and it shows that everyone, no matter who you are, in every corner of this state should be behind this amendment because it impacts all of us. This is something we can all agree on. This is not partisan or geographically located. This is something that we all are impacted by and something we can all stand together in unison and proclaim forth. If you are voting absentee this year, don't forget to request your ballot by October 18th. Check the back of the ballot as was displayed earlier. Early voting starts on October 23rd through October 31st, and Election Day is November 2nd. Those are a lot of days to make your voices heard and to show how important this ballot initiative is. If you need help finding any or any voting location or have any questions, you can feel free to call our office, and we are here to help. But I want to thank everyone who's here, everyone who's part of this coalition, everyone who showed up just to be here in person to make your voices heard. We have an incredible opportunity in the next couple of weeks. Thank you so much for all of your support.